about a foot above where it usually came from. Now it sounds like he's actually standing up. And this is something that I've never had. Height cues, I've never had those. All right, guys, today starts the 2-channel listening test. This is going to be the first test of many that I'm going to burn through with this system. Combinations of different equipment, comparisons, all that kind of good stuff. Starting off very basic, just the 2 mains, left and right, no subs, no nothing. I'm going to do the full stack, ACURUS MUSE, and the M8 amplifier. I'm going to compare that against my JBL synthesis and monolith, which I am very familiar with. Let me just give you a brief rundown of the room layout just so you know what I'm working with. I've got 2 Polk LSIM 707s as my mains. Excellent speakers. I absolutely love them. 706 for the center, 72 FXs for surround, 4 Atmos up in the ceiling with aimable tweeters, everything aimed at and for just this center seat. Yes, I am close to the back wall. It's a living room. I am limited to what the wife will let me do. The other seats, I do not care about. These 2 during movies, it's okay. No 3D magic. Center seat, absolute nirvana. End seats, horrible. But I'm the only one that gives a crap about the audio when I'm watching a movie. So this is my seat, and that's what everything is around. Yes, the TV's high. Yes, there's a fireplace. Yes, we're in Florida. No, it doesn't work. I disabled it. In fact, I have the entire inside coated in, can't remember the brand name, but the anti-vibration mats that you put in cars and stuff. So it's completely inert. 2 PSA audio subs, dual 18s on each. In room, they dig down into single digits cleanly. When I'm sitting up, everything is magical, especially with Atmos. And when you're reclined, and I've got the TV tilted on plane to the seat, it's perfect. Well, slight change of plans, and it's a good thing. I am now kind of more focused on what I'm going to be doing here, and it's only because of a happy accident. Got everything set up. All I was doing is verifying I had my connections right. I've got the speakers, at the right levels and everything, all that. So I was playing just a few snippets of some test tracks real quick. I wasn't really listening for anything. I was just making sure that things sounded right. Went through, I made sure it's set to 2.0, speakers on large, all PEQs on bypass, that kind of thing. No processing, direct in, streamer set to the maximum. Oh, and by the way, the WIM, however you pronounce it, got an update, and optical now supports up to 192. So, hey, cool. And this, of course, does take it on an input. And one note, you do need to set on the WIM, I put a 500 millisecond delay on the optical audio. Otherwise, there's a slight incompatibility with the optical in on the MUSE, and you get some crackles between tracks. But that's what the adjustment is for on the WIM, and that eliminated it, so all good there. Anyway, so just quickly listening to some tests and making sure, oh my God, I ran into a couple tracks. One of which, I'm not exaggerating, made me sit up in my seat and look around to see what the hell was going on. It was different. So here's what I'm going to do. I made up some rough diagrams here of my room. And I've just got a bunch of these sheets, right? I'm going to now note a handful of songs where there is an obvious difference. And I'm not talking about, I've got to think about, is that kind of different? No, I'm talking about the things I heard were things I have never heard in this room. Not even close. Specifically, 3D sound. Very specifically one, what was it called? Oh my God, dancing flute. I'm not kidding. In my old system, I always had very good soundstage. Speakers completely disappear. And by the way, these are set physically via the master set system. That is my first step whenever I play speakers. So these are locked into the room. Clover, I'll take you out in a minute. The speakers are locked into the room. So even with no processing, I can plug anything into these speakers and I am going to have the perfect physical setup already. So that was done. And I've already had in this system sounds coming from the kitchen. All right. Speakers, you could close your eyes and you would have absolutely no idea where they are in the room. But the soundstage was always, it was like, this deep. It sounded like there was somebody in the room, but it always sounded like everybody was standing on the speaker plane, somewhere in between here, sometimes a little beyond the speakers, but that's it. And it was great. Loved it. This moves things here. I'm not joking. I have never experienced it before. I'm talking 2-channel. I'm not talking surround sound. There are things reaching to my seat in the room on normal stereo tracks. So that's what I'm looking for. All I have to do is find those tracks. And I'm going to draw on this chart on each track with each combo of equipment what I'm hearing and where. And I'm going to make notes. And then I'm going to unplug everything. These are completely separated systems. I'm even going to switch the streamer. So I'm going to keep it apples to apples. Even though my synthesis has Tidal Connect built in, I'm still going to use this. So everything's going to be the same. The only difference will be the processor and amp. And I'm going to turn off all processing on that, completely apples to apples. I've got separate cables. This one is the new one I just made going to the M8. So all I'm doing is swapping the cables at the speakers. That's it. Here's the one going to my synthesis, or my monolith, I should say, and here's coming from the M8. So I'm just going to swap these, and I will be able to A/B test. I don't need to do it blind because there is that much of a difference. And then, this is going to take me some time, obviously, but then I'm going to swap in, and I'm going to go from the MUSE to the monolith, and then I'll go from the synthesis to the M8. And I just want to see what happens. But it is already freaking amazing. And there are already differences beyond that I can hear, but I'll get into that when I'm done because I'm super excited. I should also note that when I'm listening or watching anything serious, I have this blackout / slightly acoustic curtain shut, and it does make a good difference. I do have a ton of space here from the side of the speaker over as well, so there's really no first reflection to begin with. So the feet came in here, just swapping them out. Really simple. Just got 2 screws to take off the racks or take off the feet. And they are different screws. Tapered head here for the racks, little pan heads for the feet. And they're basically the small size butt kicker isolators. Pretty much the same things, a little bit smaller, that I've used on seats, for example. But you can put them on equipment. And here's what the full stack looks like with all the factory feet on. Absolutely beautiful looking. Wow. Almost at a loss for words here, and it's more of struggling to find the right words and not sound like an idiot or make up terms. I'm going to try to keep this as relatable. As far as what I'm hearing, I have to wrap this up. I have been spending hours and hours listening to music. I have hundreds of test tracks and songs that I love that I could just now spend literal weeks listening to. I should say re-listening to, because in many of them, not all of them, but many of them, I'm hearing so many new things. Not just different things, but new things, whether it's hearing the intricacies and the sounds of different parts of the instrument that I couldn't before, or interaction in the room recording. I'll get to these. I just got to get through it. So I've got lists here of tracks with notes, and like I said, this could be hours long if I went through all my tracks and just started listening. I've swapped back and forth. Oh, and I am still going to do the cross equipment tests, amp to processors and vice versa. I'm going to move that to the end though, because I want to jump to multi-channel right after this. There's just no reason to put that off. The cross equipment stuff is just for curiosity. All right. I already know. I knew in 5 minutes of just quickly running through stuff to test that there was something on a serious new level. And it kind of pisses me off because I loved my old system so much. Still do. It's still a great system. But it's not even able to compete with some tracks. Okay, that is a huge caveat. Most tracks, I'm not saying there isn't any difference, but I'm not picking it up. And that has more to do with the quality of the recording than anything else. Everything still sounds great, even when it's a crappy recording, but I'm not hearing the next level differences and this stuff that I'm going to go through. I'm going to give you tracks and very specific things that you can listen to, and hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. And maybe if you're just not picking this kind of stuff up, in some cases that's going to be very easy to understand, and in some cases you're going to think you're hearing it, because I can tell you a lot of this stuff I thought I was hearing and loving in the old system, but now it's not that I'm not hearing it, but I'm hearing it very different. Hopefully you'll know what I mean as I get through stuff. So I did have a number of tracks here where I have spatial cues, actual sound like it's in different parts of the room that are very different between the two systems. So I've kind of drawn some notes here. And then for a bunch of other tracks, I just have written notes that I'm going to go through with you. And it's, again, things that are only different between the two systems. Not like, oh, listen to this track because it's really good for this. That's not what this is about. This is about the difference I'm hearing going from my synthesis to the ACURUS. All right, starting off, let me pull up the track list so I can tell you the right artists as well. All right, starting off with one that I've used for testing for multiple purposes is Bubbles by Yoshi Horikawa. And by the way, I'm on Tidal. If you want to get all of these, they are currently on Tidal, probably Spotify and most others as well, but I can only guarantee Tidal. Anyway, this is a track. If you've listened to it, you know what it is. It's a lot of bouncing ball sounds. Think like ping pong balls, different tones of things moving around, right? This is one that has different spatial cues. On the old system, it is very wide and expansive, goes just beyond the speakers. Everything is very evenly spaced. You can hear lots and lots of independent bounces and ball sounds and all that kind of stuff. And it always amazed me. It also has an almost cue sound like wraparound ambience. It just sounds like, maybe there's some surround sound speakers on, but sound isn't emanating from them. It just gives like this ambient kind of room noise. Both systems have that. However, the ACURUS has what I can only describe as a realism. And here's the big thing. When I was listening to everything, I did so on the ACURUS first. So what I'm cueing in my mind is, that sounds different. What am I picking up? What do I think I'm hearing different? Then I went back after making notes and played it back on the old system, which made that difference because I was specifically looking for something. For example, prickly details, not in Bubbles. This was in the next one I'm talking about. But hearing the same track now sounds what I can describe as, anything I say is going to sound too drastic and like make the old system sound like crap, but muffled, or whatever the opposite of dynamic is. Compressed, I guess, would be a more accurate word, but I know you're going to think of bit compression. That's not what I mean. I just mean like, if a sound is like, wah, compressed would be, wah. There's just something less in the energy of it. And again, that sounds like one of those stupid words that I hear audiophiles use. I'm not that guy. But that's the best I can describe it. It just sounds like everything was brought down. The volume's the same, sound stage is the same instruments are there. But for example, a bounce of a ping pong sounds like somebody is in my living room bouncing a ping pong on my floor. Whereas on the old system, yeah, it sounds like a ping pong ball, but it sounds like it's sound being played back in between the speakers somewhere in space. There's just that realism. Moving on, next one. Oh, before that, I want to mention why I started with the ACURUS stack. This is something I learned decades ago. I don't remember who taught it to me, but the human mind is much better at detecting things that are missing than things that are new. So if you have two things that you're comparing and you're trying to see which is better or different in any way, start with the one you think should be better, and then go back to the whatever it was. You may already know this, but not have realized it if you've ever had an eye exam. Bass and Drum Intro Live, Nils Lofgren Band. This is one I was very impressed with, and there are a few things here that I can definitely tell you are absolutely different. I don't know why as far as what's producing the difference, but it's something that I can articulate very plainly, and that is the detail of the fingers on strings. I can describe this as prickly detail. It's not that you don't hear the plucks of the strings in the other system, but the ACURUS, you almost hear the scraping of the fingernails. It's not any louder. Same frequencies, same everything. It's just coming through, again, with that sense of realism. I'm going to use the word depth here, but I don't mean physicality. I mean, it just brings the sound of plucking that string, again, like it's in the room, as opposed to I'm listening to a really good recording on a stereo. It just has that 3D real presence to those specific parts of the sound. It's really freaky. And the general pluck nuances, again, you hear the attack and decay of every sound, even the brief ones, is noticeable. And again, you go back to the old system, I don't want to say, this is where I think people are using words like lifting a veil or smeared, because that's what it sounds like. Not the whole thing, just these small differences. It's like there's a thin blanket over the tweeter or something. It's just like there's something in between you and the sound that wasn't there before. That's the best I can describe it. Royals, who does that one? Lord. I don't get hung up on names. I really don't care. I know track titles. Who sings and who performs and records. Sometimes you got me. I don't really care. This is a track that I actually use more for bass calibration, but this really stood out to me. The in-recording room reverb. It's there on the other system, but this actually kind of almost melts it into my room like I'm hearing actual reverb rather than the music had reverb applied. Again, that little extra level makes it more real. That's the best I can describe it. I mean, they really need a tagline with the word real on their equipment, because in a word, that's what I'm hearing. It's making some tracks sound real, like I'm sitting in the studio in front of them playing. Again, only some tracks. Oh, going back to bubbles really quickly, this is what I drew my chart of. I noted that I have sound just beyond the speakers, pretty good depth, sounds like everything's within a foot or two. The difference on the ACURUS is what I described as pinpoint layers. Again, I talked about the little stuff you hear and the clarity of it and the dynamics of it, but this broke out where things are recorded. I didn't have that at all in the other system. It was all horizontal. Now, the stuff wasn't moving around in the room, but you could tell that, for example, the heavier ball was a couple feet behind the lighter ball, things like that are really hard to detect because there's a lot of different sounds. There might be 10 or 20 balls hitting and bouncing at the same time, but you can pick out, and your brain just almost sees every single one of them. Then I went back to the old system, and while you still hear that sound, at some point when they start getting more, or faster, I should say, they're coming down lower and bouncing faster and faster, at some point, they just kind of melt together and you just hear like a wall of bouncing noises. Where on the ACURUS, you hear brrr, and you're almost looking at them because that layer helped my brain separate the actual objects or instruments or whatever's being recorded there. And they didn't just go to a wall of sound. They stayed 20 or 30 different things, whatever it is. Just freaky. Some of these things are just like, I didn't think it was possible. Just, I really want to know why these things happen. Like, is it because this wire is a certain material and in a certain place where it's not going near something else? Or I want to know, like, this particular effect. What gives a layer? Show me the physical component, show me why. Is it I don't know. That is most interesting to me. All right, this was actually the first one, again, when I was just doing simple system hookup checks. Made me sit up in my seat because, number one, it's probably one of the best recorded tracks in history. It's by Dr. Chesky, and his accomplishments in the audio recording field are legend. Look it up, download stuff, and listen, and you'll quickly know what I mean. But he has a very famous track, Dancing Flute, and it has not only instruments in various specific places, and he describes, if you go to the details about his tracks, he'll describe exactly where things were on the stage, on recording day, what you should hear, what you should be listening for, etc., etc. Makes his stuff insanely useful. But it's also, if you're going to make something sound like you're there in a room, this is the kind of stuff you need to play because it was recorded to do that. And it sounds like I'm in the studio. Again, it's not that things are moving back to my seat. It's the ambience and the natural room reverb coming all the way back, like surround sound speakers are on. Now, I don't mean, I'm hearing, echoed behind my ear. I don't hear anything like that. My brain thinks my living room expanded and shot back 30 feet and is made of concrete and wood. It sounds real to my head. That's what I mean. Now, the one huge difference, I'm going to say one huge difference and one still big difference. The flute sound on the old system, you could hear it, moving. He's walking around here and there. You hear it kind of circle the left speaker in that area and that kind of thing. And it always stayed on a plane, between the speakers on, up front. It sounded like everything was 10, 12 feet in front of me. Sound great. Thought that's how it was recorded. Nope. No. It now sounds like the stage is on an angle with the flute guy about 5 feet closer than ever before, kind of off to my left, almost arm's reach. And you got the guy in the corner who's now sounding like he's 2-3 feet back further than where the speaker is that I didn't have before. Everything else is pretty much in the center, but it just made this stage skew as best as I can describe it. And it's obvious. And this was playing really quickly. It's right at the beginning that you can hear some of this. And I'm like, did I screw something up? Because I had never heard that flute towards me. It was just jarring. And then you go back to the old system and it's like, it's instant and you can't unhear it. I tell you, if you ever want that feeling, just go to an audio show and listen to a few of the really good rooms in the sweet spot. And then you'll go home and know what you're missing. Trust me, I've done that a few times. Next, I've got Drum Stop No Good by Steve Smith. Now, again, this is one that I typically use for mid bass and specific lower end region and not for any kind of soundstage. And I immediately noticed something. The center drum, usually, again, everything was on this normal plane, fairly flat horizontally, sounded great, nothing unusual. But all of a sudden, these drums are, again, a couple feet back than they had ever been, and the stage sounds like a triangle. Again, jarring, just this weird difference. The dynamics, again, especially in any kind of percussion instrument, just takes it to another level. Anything. And especially, I've got a note coming up on this, I think, all piano. As long as it's, not electronic or sampled or anything like that. A great recording, any great recording of piano. Piano to me is one of the hardest instruments to reproduce and make your brain think is real. It can sound great, but your brain usually thinks it's a recording. If you don't know what I mean, you haven't heard live piano. I used to work stage and I've heard orchestra for years. So I know live piano. This was the first one that comes close. I'm not going to say it does it. I would never mistake this for a grand piano on the other side of me. But this is a noticeable, tangible, unmistakable step up in the realism of piano in all regards. And I think it has to do with the dynamics because, again, that attack and decay of the piano strings and even the keys on some recording, your brain just thinks, whoa, that's almost real. That's really, really close. Just sounds so good. And again, one of those things I want to know what component, what material, what design does that? Because I want to know. Skipping one ahead just to go along with that, great piano dynamics, if you want to hear them, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, live by Sarah, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Bareilles. I'm sorry, Sarah. I haven't heard the name, I don't think. Anyway, that track was actually sent to me by my JBL dealer at the time, and he shared it as a great live recording to, make it sound like you're in the venue. Sounds like a little jazz club or something. And it does. It has great room ambience, and it's a very clean recording. But the piano immediately, I immediately looked up. Like, I have never heard this recording sound like that. Got to try it. I hope you've all heard a live grand piano enough to know what I'm talking about, but that just blows my mind. Moving on. Kind of going along with the tail end of that, I think it's called Ben Susan by Michael Hedges. Just a really fun track, and again, one great for testing because it has a bunch of different things in it. But what jumped out to me here was the, again, natural, real room recording reverb of the whole track. It just fills the room. It was there before, but again, that mutedness, that lack of realism and all the depth, it's on another level. It is, again, a scary difference that I'd never heard before. When I was going through this stuff, listening for these kinds of differences, I'll say 8 out of 10. Play it, listen 10, 15 seconds, sounds absolutely identical to every time I've ever heard it. It's not a great recording, move on. So again, all of these that I'm listing, really good recordings. Something in that you can really nail down to hear the dynamics and detail of the string differences are the hammer-ons on the guitar. It is on another level. This is probably the one I'm happiest with. It is one of my all-time favorite tracks, period. Not for testing, just to enjoy listening to. It's one that you can chill with, that will, at least wind me down. You can have a drink with it and just melt into the music. And sometimes I can fall asleep to it. And that's Flamenco Sketches by Miles Davis. There's just something magical about it. And this is one that absolutely shocked me for 2 reasons. One, he's always been center stage, great lifelike size, image. It sounds like he's in front of you. All right. It had that before. Now this track is old, mind you, and I don't think there are many of the dynamic cues in this, and that's why it still sounds really good on the old system. But what's different overall is the best I could describe as thick notes. I can't think of any other words to convey the difference. If you were here and you heard what I heard, I think I would say thick notes to you and you'd go, That's it. It's one of those things that uh, it's not realism that I'm talking about. It's the hanging and if it was a cigar, I'd call the smoke chewy. All right, I'm really struggling here. But the notes permeate the space and just they cut through it and they hang at the same time. It's just thick. I wish I could bring you all here because this isn't anything you can record. The other difference, and this was just something that surprised me and what made me immediately take note 10 seconds into the track when he starts, is he's higher. Like up. About a foot above where it usually came from. Now it sounds like he's actually standing up. And this is something that I've never had. Height cues, I've never had those. It's always sounded like, you know, a singer was head size and that kind of thing, and you could easily place them, seamless, all that. But I've never had any variation in height. Now, it could be that what I listen to doesn't have any recording detail for that, and maybe this is the first one I happen to run into with it. But it made me do this with my head. Like, I've never looked up there before. Again, one of those things where you don't have to think, is that different? I'm not sure. No, it's a point versus point difference. It's there, plain as day. So that was really freaky, and it really made it that much more interesting to me now to sit and just listen to. I could put that on repeat for an hour and not get sick of it. So that's really cool. But that thick note difference, another freaking level of enjoyment. I'm not going to say realism. It sounds better. All right, I'm going to finish this page up. I got 3 or 4 more, and then I'm going to call it a wrap. This video is probably stupid long already. Days Like This by Annette Askvik. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. This was another one where I wasn't expecting any big difference. It's a quiet, chill track. And then I started playing it. I have never heard her sound this lifelike. Again, placement, still the same. Very nice center image. She's right there in the room with you, all that kind of good stuff. Now it sounds like she's standing in the room, not just it's a great recording of her in the center of a stage. I don't know why, because her vocals, the notes I have are real room presence and crystal vocals. Sounds like the center speaker is on. And that's exactly what it sounded like. Not just the location. I mean, it sounded like she was standing in my center speaker. Just a real person. That was a real surprise. It's a great track. I don't listen to it for fun, but great for testing. And that was a day and night difference. Now this is one I listened for fun. 3 O'Clock Blues by Eric Clapton and B.B. King. Again, another one that surprised me because it's an older recording. I didn't expect anything special to come out of it. But this one surprised me in a way that none of the others did. It again stepped up the realism, but I wrote instrument separation. Wow. Every single thing is distinct, not just with depth, but presence. It always sounded like, okay, this was over here and that was over there. Now it sounds like, and they're this tall. Your brain just thinks there is a thing there that I can pluck, like I'm in VR. Just that extra oomph in realism. Soundstage and everything else stayed the same. That was just the one thing on that track that was like, bam, in your face. You don't have to think about it. All right, last one. Let me get the artist for this one. Tin Pan Alley by Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. Couldn't remember who the collab was. This one, again, I tried to pick things where it's showing something obvious and something different because there were a lot of different differences. Some tracks had combos. This one, the reverb is on another level. It's like you're hearing the room as it's being recorded. Going back to the old system, it sounded like a recording of reverb. I know that sounds like garbage. Saying it, I just realized that. Muted, I want to say muffled, a lot less decay. The new system has so much more decay in the nuances, especially in reverb. That might be it. Just saying it, it just kind of made it click. The room reverb should never shut off. And on the old system, again, it sounded kind of like a recording of reverb, but it never took over my room. And that's exactly what it did here. Especially the percussion. Insane reverb and realism off just hitting the instrument surfaces. Just amazing. Just lost a light. Need a new battery. So with that, I am going to wrap up this episode. Absolutely stellar performance. That's all I can say. What a fantastic job on this stuff. If it can get better, I don't want to hear it. Let me put it that way. This is a pretty high bar. Next up, I will have the start of multi-channel. I'm going to have to pare that down because if I did this much stuff in movies, it would be 2 weeks to the next episode. So I'm going to try to do that as quickly as possible, but I'm going to do the same thing uncalibrated. Then I'm going to whip out that box and we're going to go through Aspect, which is their automatic room correction, not just software, but hardware. And we'll apply that. And then we're going to circle back to music and movies and see what we can get as far as a 3D Atmos bubble and all that kind of good stuff. Much more stuff coming right up. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.